welcome to the latest episode of On the Desk of Brian, an easygoing podcast where I explore a mix of my interests. In today's episode, I look at the economy and how it's impacting back-to-school shopping, ways to save hours in Excel, how AI is making its way into the viewing habits of Prime Video users, the financial state of the NFL, and much more. Our first article comes to us from Scripps News and is written by Stephanie Liebergen and Emily Hanford Ostman. In their article, they write that due to rising costs and economic uncertainty, back-to-school shoppers are looking for more deals and tightening their budget. Citing the consulting firm Deloitte, the article explains that 57% of parents expect economic conditions to get worse in the next 6 months. In addition, the survey found that families are being more deliberate and value-seeking in how they spend. Stephanie and Emily also note comments from Mark Matthews, the chief economist from the National Retail Federation. Mark notes that while shoppers are hunting for bargains, it's creating more competition between brick and mortar and online stores that may result in better prices. Another survey was provided in the article by NerdWallet. That survey noted that 21% of families are looking to pick up some of the back-to-school supplies at free school supply drives, and 19% are planning on buying at least some clothes secondhand. Next up is an article from Chris Tolomia, writing for Quartz. In the article, Chris shares 20 Excel skills that may save hours of work every week. I'll share some in particular that I found that I may be able to incorporate into my workflow. The first is using keyboard shortcuts rather than navigating as much using the mouse. Another useful tool that I should use more of is conditional formatting. Using this tool, I can more easily notice duplicate entries or draw my attention to entries that are low or high in value. I should also use more drop-down lists, especially for those spreadsheets that multiple people type into, in order to prevent more typos, or even organize data better when I utilize the COUNTIF formula. I encourage you to read more of the tips that Chris shares. Please check out the link to the article in the show notes. Making Use Of brings us our next article, written by Yadula Abidi. In the article, Yadula writes about how the Raspberry Pi, the budget computer for DIY computer projects, may be losing favor to other systems. One reason is due to increased prices of the Raspberry Pis. For example, the Pi 5 was released in September 2023, costing $80 for the 8GB model and $120 for the 16GB version. But today, it's common to find that 8GB model selling for as much as $200 and the 16GB model selling for $300. In addition, we're seeing more mini PCs in the marketplace. x86 mini PCs using the Intel N100 chips are selling fully assembled with RAM, storage, a case, and power supply. This differs from the Raspberry Pis, which generally require the parts to be purchased separately. Then, the article adds that while Raspberry Pi is still a great choice for sensors and Internet of Things projects, some of the benefits of the x86 architecture can be a benefit for media servers, such as Plex or Jellyfin. Lastly, Yadula points out that the competition has really stepped up in recent years, such as Orange Pi, Banana Pi, and others. It's been a couple years since we've seen the last of Ted Lasso, but that's all about to change, as Season 4 comes back on August 5th. Tom Parfit from Yahoo Entertainment gives us details on what to know before the show debuts. Please note, there are some spoilers if you haven't watched the series thus far. This is your warning to skip ahead if you need to. Tom mentions that when Season 3 ended, Ted returned home to Kansas. As this occurred, Roy Kent took over the role as manager, Coach Beard remained in England, and Jamie Tart matured into a team leader. Nate Shelley went from friend to foe to friend again, and Rebecca Welton was able to move past the disagreements with her husband, Rupert Mannion. Keeley also noted that an idea of Richmond launching a women's team, which of course will play a big role into the revival of the series in Season 4. Reuters brings us the next article, written by Greg Bensinger. In his article, Greg writes about how AI is becoming more prevalent for consumers while using Prime Video. In the article, Greg notes that users will soon see deeper Alexa integration into Prime Video's search. Some of the updates may include seeing AI-driven recommendations for titles, such as action movies from the 1980s, and also will drive the highlights section of the Thursday night football games. Greg adds that Amazon is financially invested into putting forth a lot of money into AI, noting a $200 billion amount in capital expenses this year, along with an initial $23 billion investment in OpenAI and Anthropic. Ryan Christoffel from 9to5Mac has our next article, where he discusses that Season 5 will be the last season for the morning show. This is one of the original shows that Apple TV Plus at the time, launched back in 2019. Jeff Daniels will be joining the cast for the last season, alongside Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon. Apple said the last season will premiere in 2027. Ryan writes that typically this show airs in the fall, so fall 2027 is most likely. And now a word from a company who is definitely not a sponsor.
The Budget Box 5. This segment is not sponsored by anyone, but if it were, it would be by the Budget Box 5, the all-in-one back-to-school survival computer for families who are, according to a new Deloitte survey, seriously down with rising prices. That's right, Budget Box 5 combines the tiny computer power you used to get from a Raspberry Pi, minus the part where it now costs $300 for what used to run you $80. We took one look at those prices and thought, you know what's cheaper than a Raspberry Pi in 2026? Literally an entire pre-built mini PC. So that's what we built. Every Budget Box 5 comes preloaded with 20 Excel shortcuts you'll never actually memorize, conditional formatting that judges your spreadsheet choices in real time, and a built-in Alexa assistant that will recommend you action movies from the 1980s, whether you asked or not, because apparently that's just what Prime Video does now. Buy one this back-to-school season and we'll throw in a free secondhand hoodie, because 19% of you were already planning on that anyway. Legal disclaimer, Budget Box 5 is not a real product, is not compatible with Jellyfin, Plex, or Emotional Stability, and will not help you cope with the fact that both Ted Lasso and The Morning Show are ending. Void where prices are already too high, which is everywhere. Budget Box 5, it's not a sponsor, it's not a pie, it's barely a computer. But hey, at least it's on sale.
Thank you to Claude and Vexel for today's Not a Sponsor segment. Good news for Phoenix Suns fans. Amar'e Stoudemire is going into the NBA Hall of Fame. Horace Shivers from Sporting News wrote up some additional details about the induction. Stoudemire was drafted number 9 overall by the Phoenix Suns back in 2002 right out of high school. He played professionally in the NBA for 14 seasons, racking up nearly 16,000 points, 6,632 rebounds, and over 1,000 blocks. Amar'e was selected a 6-time All-Star and selected 5 times to All-NBA team honors. Besides playing for the Suns, Stoudemire played for the Knicks, Mavericks, and Heat before then going overseas and winning titles in Israel. As the only publicly owned franchise in the NFL, the Green Bay Packers recently reported on their finances. As Matt Schneidman reported for the New York Times, thanks to the Packers' financial disclosure, we are able to know that the NFL brought in more than $14.5 billion, most of which came from broadcast deals. Broken out between the 32 teams meant that the Packers received $453.2 million, which is up more than $20 million from the previous year. At the shareholder meeting, team president Ed Policy also added that the local revenue was almost $300 million, which represents more than $13 million from last year. This is impressive, considering there was one less home game. Despite all that, the Packers posted an operating deficit of about $1.1 million. Matt notes that Policy attributed that to increased player costs. To increase revenue, Ed Policy did note that some of the practice facilities and fields will have their naming rights sold, but Lambeau Field itself is off limits. Additionally, the Packers will work to have more major events take place at Lambeau Field. As we prepare for the 100th meeting between Arizona State Sun Devils and their arch rivals from Tucson this year, Dan Bickley from Arizona Sports has an article that attempts to answer the question if head coach of ASU Football, Kenny Dillingham, can overcome some challenges to maintain the momentum he's built since taking over the position. With Sam Levitt now playing for the LSU Tigers, the starting quarterback competition is wide open. It looks like it's between Cutter Boley, Mikey Keene, Jake Fett, and Cam Dyer. In addition, the Devils have a very challenging schedule this year, playing at Texas A&M and then turning around a week later for the first ever college football game at Wembley Stadium in London. Odds makers are putting Arizona State at 6.5 wins. On a positive note, Bickley notes that 90% of season ticket holders have renewed since last season, and there is a strong possibility that season tickets may go on to a wait list at some point during the season. So, that wraps up another episode of On the Desk of Brian. If you liked what you heard today, please be sure to follow and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. If you want to find me between episodes, you'll find me most often on Mac Voices Live, which records on Tuesday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern. Please visit my website, brian8944.com, so you can keep up with all my ongoing and upcoming projects. You can also contact me there with any feedback you may have. So until next time, so long for now.